All right, we are here live to talk to you about Encanto programming that can be culturally informed to really make it an opportunity for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am so pleased to be here today with Ms. Rosie, who is known for her beautiful bilingual programming. And she's a native Colombian with a really wonderful background in this presentation. It was recently at the Rails conference, their best attended presentation was standing room only. So we're lucky to get this encore presentation of her beautiful piece on Encanto, which I know many of us will be covering in our libraries. So, and we've got me and Miss Kate, the Lavender Librarian, and Miss Ingrid of Sing, Rhyme, and Play. We are on the Solidarity team here with Ms. Rosie to introduce this programming. So thank you, Rosie. Are you ready? We'll take it away.
Yes, ready. Okay. Welcome, and thank you for choosing to come to Encanto and Culturally Informed Programming. I'm going to try and give you a quick how-to, a 1, 2, 3 step process in how to plan and prepare a multiculturally authentic and inclusive program. And then I'm going to show you how to implement these steps into creating an inspired Encanto program. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of everything for you. Slide. So my name is Miss Rosie Camargo. You can call me Miss Rosie. You can follow me on Pinterest, Facebook, and Storytime Solidarity. Slide. This topic of authentic and respectful multicultural programming can be at times heavy and sensitive for some folks. And I just want to start in a happy place. So these are a few of my favorite things. Do you know any of these wonderful sea creatures, animals from the jungle? I discovered the sea bunny just recently. It's adorable. Google it. It'll make you feel so happy and warm. And in the center is my beautiful strawberry. That is my daughter. Her name is Zoila. And that's also a very traditional and typical name in Colombia. Okay, slide. So let us begin with a rundown of the steps we're going to delve into later on. So first, we're going to learn about researching extensively. And I know you librarians are great at this. Number 2, we're going to customize or un-stereotype our program. Number 3, we're going to assemble. So we're going to make our kits. We're going to find our crafts. And number 4, we're going to be open to feedback. So these are the steps and processes I use and work for me. I hope it helps you. This is my personal account of how I created my programs. This is my way to present my programs to the best of my abilities authentically. I've included a resource guide to some of my presenters or printout kits and books that I suggest. I have a lot of boards on my Pinterest page. I tell everyone to follow that. It's updated almost regularly. My email will be on the final slide, so if you would like to contact me, I would love to hear from you. I'm hoping that at the end of this presentation, you will be building bridges with your local community organizations, creating inclusive and authentic programs for your library. Slide. I want to share with you a little bit about my cultural background. Let me present to you a photo of my family. I'm just kidding. Next slide. My family, which is almost the same thing. So this is why I love Encanto, because representation matters. This is my family. We are all different colors. We have so much differences, and we are mixed colors, mixed experiences. We are also mixed cultures. So my family, some married a Puerto Rican, my sister-in-law is Honduran, my nephews are Guatemalans. So we're not just one thing anymore either. And because of this, we also have different levels of privilege within my family. We have different levels of citizenship status within my family. And we also then have different treatments to how we go out in society. Slide. Okay, so my background. My family immigrated from Colombia, first my father and then my mother. And finally, when I was about 3 or 4 years old, my siblings then immigrated to the United States. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I consider myself a native Spanish speaker because my first and only language for the first 3 or 4 years of my life was only Spanish. I spoke little to no English. No one in my house spoke English because everybody had recently arrived. Spanish was our home language. English was my second language. I grew up with a deep understanding of my Colombian background. We observed Colombian traditions. We listened to Colombian music. I learned the Colombian cultural dances. I had my dress. Later on, you'll see a photo. It's a very typical dress you wear for certain dances. And especially, I grew up eating very authentic Colombian meals. Yummy. We'll all leave very hungry after this. Okay, next. I want to explain how libraries work in parts of Latin America. Librarias, so we would think libraries is librarias. They're not. Librarias are bookstores. It's places where you purchase your books. Bibliotecas are libraries, to our understanding, public libraries. But these libraries aren't public. They're usually universities, research libraries. They're usually museums, like archives for old texts. They're usually also converted monasteries. So it's not really what we are accustomed to about public libraries. Slide. I'm going to show you a few. So this is the Royal Portuguese Reading Room in Brazil that was completed in 1887. Look at how beautiful that is. That is a library. Slide. Our next one is the Library of the San Francisco Monastery in Peru, completed in 1672. It holds some of the oldest religious scripts in the world. That is a library. Next slide. This is one of my favorites. So this is La Biblioteca Nacional Miguel Obregón Licyon, which is completed in 1940 and then renovated about 20 years ago, I think, to start servicing as a public library. So this is a really great example of how something is, they're changing the way they want to do things. So until very recently, the concept of public libraries really did not exist in Latin American countries. The idea of going into a building with public access that is filled with all kinds of materials and you can take it home by using a card with no monetary exchange. This is unfathomable. In the last 10 years, public libraries have been created in some parts of Latin America. But right now, they're focusing on very affluent areas due to the funding, or in high populated areas because Latin America has very rural areas, high up in the mountains, high up in peaks, inside rainforests. So it's harder to get to some of these communities. But we're starting. Okay, slide. Okay, if you are interested, if you would like an understanding of the immigrant experience with American public libraries, I highly suggest you read Dreamers by Yuyi Morales. It is a children's nonfiction picture book written and illustrated by the author Yuyi Morales. It chronicles Yuyi's journey from Mexico to the United States with her child, Kelly. It also talks about her first time experiencing the public library and how it transformed her access to information and helped her family thrive because of it. Slide. Okay, so now let us get into it. The steps to how to DIY your multicultural program. Then I will show you some points to creating your Encanto program. Slide. We're going to research extensively. Research like you're going on a trip. When visiting a foreign country, you usually make sure you know everything so you're better prepared when you're there. You research the map. You learn what areas to avoid, the nice scenic places, the etiquette, the food, the customs, the language. You get my point. Put this amount of effort into creating your program. Make sure, this is a side note, but it's very important, to make sure you are spelling Colombia correctly. It is very common because we have spell check, we have autocorrect, but Colombia is not spelled with a U. So it's not Columbia. We are Colombia. It's just something that I've noticed is picking up because of the Encanto. People just type things and it will autocorrect on you. And that is one thing that I know will make some people angry. So we want to start making those conscious steps at the very beginning. Okay, so what we want to do is research Latine programmers. If you are not of Latine background, research people that are. For instance, like I am, or you can research on Pinterest or Instagram. There's some great librarians I follow that are Latine. I have a few I follow on Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't be shy. Email, contact those people. We want to share our ideas with you. Ask us your questions. Ask for recommendations. Ask for opinions. Ask for advice or suggestions. We want to share it because we also want to be represented authentically and respectfully and in truth. Do a deep dive on the authenticity of your idea first. You have an idea? That is great. Google it. Make sure that it's an okay idea. And if you don't know, you want to reach out to those contacts, to those Latine programmers or any other multicultural group. Like, I'm really interested in doing this. What would you suggest? Okay, slide. Here's my example of what I mean about researching extensively and how it relates to Encanto or Colombia. So I'm going to show you some fun facts that you can use. These are inspirations for your research when creating a program about a particular country, but we're going to focus on Colombia as the example. Okay, you want to do an Encanto Colombia inspired program. Great. We are going to find out about the flag. Every country has a flag. It's important. It has meaning. Every country respects their flag. The modern explanation of the colors is the yellow that represents the gold abundance in Colombia, which is why it's the thicker portion of color. Then we have the blue, the country's seas. And the red is the blood spilled fighting for Colombia's independence. And many countries that are bordering, like Venezuela, and I think there's one more country, and I can't, Ecuador, we have the same colors, but the separation of colors are different, and some have emblems in the center. So just being aware of that you're using the correct flag when you're representing certain countries in your multicultural program. Slide. I think it is important for libraries to host multicultural programs and introduce children and your patrons to other countries, traditions, peoples, cultures, and languages. Spanish-speaking countries are not cookie cutter. So as you can see, so this is Colombia and all the various peoples you would find in Colombia. So next slide, and then I'll probably show you the next one. So Colombia has regions, and because of that, we have various skin tones, traditions, music, and particularly our clothing changes. We have warm areas, so the areas by the Caribbean. We have cold mountainous areas. If you live closer to the Andes, like in some parts of Colombia, which is Bogota, my family, we live really close to the Andes. It's pretty dry, high elevation. And we have farming communities. So let's go back to that other slide, the previous slide. So here we go. You have in the centers traditionally the mountainous or farming communities. To the right, I'm assuming is my right, you get more of the Caribbean. So they're darker toned, they're in the sun more. They don't get some of the like rainy seasons we do up by the mountains, by Andes. And then we have our cultural background, which is our indigenous roots in Colombia. Okay, skip. You can go to the next one. Yes. So traditional Colombian dishes vary upon region as well. Because of that, obviously the Caribbeans would probably have more access to fish and water. So some of their dishes will be like the fried fish, like at the bottom, pescado moqueado. That's that region. The drier areas up in the Andes, it's harder to get. So you'll probably get a lot of beans and meat and protein. So that's the bandeja paisa, the one on top. It's very heavy and you eat like beans. You can have access to eggs and stuff, but not much seafood. Then you get the center, the ajiaco. That's where Mirabel and her family are from. So they get a little bit of more like fruits. They have a little bit more access to avocados and things like that. Next slide. So we can already see it's not this, like you can't just lump us all in the same space. So the largest export for Colombia is obviously coffee. Our second export is celebrities. You are welcome. Many current and trendy singers and actors right now are from Colombian backgrounds. Do you recognize anyone? I'm sure you do. You recognize Sofia Vergara. On the bottom, next to Encanto, it's Carlos Vives. He's like the quintessential Colombian singer for us. He represents so much and he's so proud of his roots. J Balvin is really popular right now. Maluma is pretty popular. Maybe you've heard of Shakira. She's Colombian. But also, we all have extra backgrounds, right? So Shakira is Colombian, but her family is also Lebanese. So those are our cultural backgrounds. Okay, next slide. We also have famous artists like Fernando Botero, who is globally known for his very distinct art style. He likes to draw everything big. He's one of my favorite artists. And next we have the winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. It's Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and he wrote 1,000 Years of Solitude and Love in the Time of Cholera. So they are also very important to the cultural background of Colombia. Next. So Colombia. So I'm going to start giving you some information and things that you can use when you're creating your program. This is the deep dive, right? We're getting into the bits and pieces of what this country is, how we want to create our program, right? Maybe we don't have ideas for a craft or music, but this is how we're going to do it. So we also have located in the northern South America is the country that mines the most and produces the most emeralds. Do you know that? Yes, for the global markets as well as the most desirable. It is estimated that Colombia accounts for 70 to 90% of the world's emerald market. That says a lot about us. Yeah. Colombia's national flower is the orchid. So that's another great craft you can make. You can have kids make their orchids out of paper. Colombia is rich in orchids, the richest in the world, with nearly 4,270 species of orchids known. Located in the heart of Colombia, the Andes region is one of the most populated areas of Colombia. Its geography, water sources, and great cultural and natural wealth of ecological diversity. So there's so much we can talk about if you can take out books about the Andes, show kids about mountain ranges. Also, we have many birds, but also Colombia hosts over 450 mammal species. Of these 450 species, approximately 22% are listed as either endangered or critically endangered. So you can learn tons about animals on Earth Day. You can research what are the endangered species. We have very large sections of the Amazon also in Colombia. Okay, next slide. So we're going to talk about the legends. So, and this is also things you can do for your program. So this is the legend of El Dorado in Colombia. El Dorado was a term first used by the Spanish Empire to describe the mythical chief of the Muisca tribe, which inhabited the Andes region of Colombia. In the highlands of Cundinamarca and Boyacá, so these are two areas in Colombia, the Muisca tribe was part of the big four tribes of the Americas: the Aztecs, the Mayas, the Incas, and the fourth was Muiscas. Well, you've heard about the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Incas, but I'm pretty sure you've never heard of Muisca. And they were around from between 800 to 500 BCE. Next slide. So we are now going to go into our next step. We're going to customize. We're going to un-stereotype. And a better way of saying this is we're going to make better choices. So when I create a program or my kits, I research the materials I would need to make my craft kit. I try to find the most accurate materials, and I know it could be hard. For example, looking for the specific fabric that accurately represents the country of region if we are making something from cloth. Researching the species native to the country if I want to add an animal craft. I try to find materials anywhere online. So some of the stores you can try, like Amazon, Discount School Supplies. I don't know how many of you have access to that. Michael's, Oriental Trading, your hobby places. Good places to look, but pay attention to those details, especially if you're purchasing online, especially from like Oriental Trading or someone else, because they're just going to sell you a product. They're not being equitable, diverse, or inclusive when they're creating that product. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to get to some icky truths. Okay, got to think back on those happy pictures we looked at. So group discussion, and you can add this in the chat. Let us start with some hard truths. Do you recognize any of these Latin characters? Do you see the problem with these characters? And so we see Sofia Vergara in Modern Family. She was always hilarious, but what was her problem? She was always very easily tempered. She was also very emotional. She was always happy or really high angry or really high sad. It's like, not all of us are like that. Some other ones are, of course, during this time, it got really popular, the show Narcos. And then everybody knows about Colombia and the cartels and Medellin, but we're not all like that. Also, one of the things, like when growing up, a lot of people didn't know how to pronounce my name. My full name is Rosario. And so no one could say that. And at school, sometimes I knew because the teacher would say like, and then stop. And then I'd be like, that's me. But then the show Will and Grace came out. And the maid of one of the characters was named Rosario. And the way she, of course, would say it, the character would say her name, Rosario. Suddenly, everyone knew how to say my name now. So I guess thanks, Will and Grace, for that. But yeah, so these are some hard stereotypes that people see when they think of us. Next slide. Thank you. Oh, do we have any comments? Did anybody recognize them? Okay. So sadly, we Spanish speakers or Latino descents are always lumped together. We are not all from the same place. For example, I've been mistaken and judged because I speak Spanish, because I have dark hair or darker features. I am assumed to be Mexican. And I should naturally know and respond to all stereotypical Mexican assumptions. We, the library community, need to be more culturally aware of this. We need to be the people that stop this type of thinking. We can start by being more aware and cautious with what we are putting in our take-home kits, who we are booking as performers for our libraries, or when we create themed story times or events, that we are taking the time to dig through the mess and find the truth. We need to broaden our focus. It is important to have your library represent authenticity when creating programs and events for your community. So, problematic days of celebration. And we had touched on this during Storytime Solidarity and my conference too that I was at. So, I'm going to explain to you why. So, Cinco de Mayo is an annual celebration held on May 5th, which commemorates the anniversary of Mexico's victory over the French Empire at the Battle of Puebla in 1862. Okay, so we'll remember that, right? Battle of Mexico against the French. Okay, during the Battle of Puebla in 1862. Critics observed that enthusiasm for the holiday celebration did not take off with a broader demographic until it was explicitly linked with the promotion of Mexican alcohol and beverages, and that many U.S. festivities tend to both perpetuate negative stereotypes of Mexicans and promote excessive drinking. We know this. We saw the Cinco de Mayo parties, right? This is one of the most lucrative days for alcohol sales, second to St. Patrick's Day. So why would we want to perpetuate that? Why do we want to support something that our kids can't participate in? We don't want them to drink. Let's go to the next slide. Instead, let's celebrate Mexican Independence Day. This is so important. All our countries, just like the United States and everywhere else, independence is to be proud of, to be respected, and to be supported. Because that means we as a group separated ourselves from people who were controlling us, and we were able to liberate ourselves and become our own independent place. So that's what we should be supporting. Yes, the Battle of Puebla happened. We needed that to happen, right? For them to get where they needed to get to. But we don't need to, there's a much more important time to celebrate. And that's the choices, right? Those are the better choices we're making. Okay, next. Double check your resources, right? We're going to make those better choices. So I had to really stop and grasp when a resource we usually recommend to our teachers at the library, called Scholastic Teachables, which is a wonderful resource, had this as one of their suggestions for an activity for Cinco de Mayo. This is cringeworthy. Raise your hand or, put in the chat if you know why this is cringeworthy. Remember, we're paying attention to that. It was the Mexican culture against and fighting against the French, right? Maybe this is a Spanish European from Spain flamenco dancer. Would we be using it? Let's go to the next slide. One of these is not like the other. So once again, to the right, we see the Spanish flamenco dancer. But to the right is what was the authentic clothing of the native and indigenous mestizos, Mexicans during that time. Is this correct? You have to pay attention. I would have printed that out, put it out on a table, and said, here's our Cinco de Mayo coloring sheet. I would have been prepared, and hopefully someone would bring it to my attention saying, Miss Rosie, this is wrong. So we have to do that research. Okay, next slide. So these are other examples. Would you make a do-it-yourself maraca for a program about Puerto Rico? Not likely. But if you did your research, you would probably make a guiro. That's in the bottom right-hand corner. It's the instrument mostly used in Puerto Rico. But the idea of maracas are believed to be inventions of the Tainos, and they were the indigenous people of the Caribbean. It was originally made from the fruit of the igara tree, which is round in shape. The pulp is taken out of the fruit, holes were made and filled with tiny pebbles, and then it's fitted with a handle. So kind of like this with a handle, it has ridges, you have a stick, and then when you rub it up and down, those ridges make sounds. Early maracas. So you could teach about maracas, but you could also research the background on it and the whys. Next slide. During these past few years with COVID, libraries have thrived. Good job, everyone. We figured out how to push ourselves to new limits, provide support, entertainment, build relationships, all through virtual and digital programs. We've made take-home kits. We provided electronic resources. We tried to bridge that electronic gap. Now, slowly, as we ease back into in-person programs, we want to give our patrons that personal touch we've been giving them, to have them inside our library, to participate in making crafts and enjoying presentations. We can use books, crafts, lectures, and performances to bring the world to our patrons. I also think if researched carefully and with a good community connection, it does not have to be a cost-consuming program every time you bring that multicultural experience to your library. These programs help young minds expand, to think about new ideas, new possible experiences, new ways to express themselves. And it can even plant the seeds of the love of travel and foster community bridges. All of this is happening when you create a multicultural program. Remember, windows and mirrors. We want our patrons to see themselves represented accurately, respectfully, authentically. And we want to immerse our patrons to experiencing new cultures and new people, respectfully, authenticity. So that's our job. It's a big responsibility, but I know we can do it together. Okay. So here are examples of some of my programs. And if you have any questions, if you're interested in doing one of these programs and you need help, just let me know. Put your questions. If you have any questions, this is the great time to do it. Okay. So this is what I did for Hispanic Heritage. I created a program calendar. So what we did was we led up every day. We had something different and would lead up to the big concert we had at the end. So the kits took me about 2 weeks to prepare, from conceptualizing to making the physical craft. I wanted to showcase as many countries that usually do not get represented. I know this because growing up, I never found projects about Colombia, or actually my classmates' countries either: Ecuador, Peru, Guatemala. It was always very stereotypical, generic Mexican crafts. Next slide. I looked at the map of Latin America, and I wanted to make sure I got a country from each region, right? I wanted Central and South America, and I wanted to make sure I had the Caribbean. So, my next one. Okay. So my next slide. We're going to assemble the kits, right? Now we have, sometimes we're like, I've noticed that in Storytime Solidarity, a lot of our questions are sometimes like, I need a craft idea, or I need very easy or cheap materials. How can I make something out of, these things? So this is how I'm going to help you too. Okay, next slide. So I have a friend who is Puerto Rican, and she is very proud of her Taino ancestry. I asked her, so I went to her because I'm not Puerto Rican, and I asked her all my questions. I asked for suggestions, and I learned a lot about Tainos. I wanted to make sure they were represented respectfully and authentically. I wanted to tap into those connections, find people, and ask. I used forums. I did networking groups. I used Storytime Solidarity. These are ways that you can really tap into the communities that you want to represent. Next slide. I wanted my country to be represented so that the community knew about me and my cultural background. So I asked my sister to help me create a craft for Colombia because I did not see very good options online. And that's going to happen. Maybe you just get an inspiration, but you create the craft yourself. My sister was born in Colombia and grew up most of her life there, and she went to school there. She told me the story of the lost city of gold in Lake Guatavita. Lake Guatavita is a small body of water in a forest fringe crater northeast of Bogota, where my family's from, in central Colombia. It is a sacred site to the Muisca people, who cast elaborate gold offerings into its depths, inspiring the legend of El Dorado and several ill-fated attempts to drain the lake. So what they would do is the chief and its people would adorn themselves in gold, and then like during a drought or during some pivotal important moment, they would walk into the lake and let the gold slip off and it would sink. And to this day, people are trying to find that, and they don't know how deep it goes or why, but they can't find the gold that they know exists at the bottom of this lake. Okay, so next slide. I picked Los Andes as my next craft because it could include a number of countries in one craft. At the end, I had a list of 6 crafts. I was able to represent Colombia, Peru, Mexico, Guatemala, El Caribe, which would be Cuba, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. I had South America's western side, which was Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Chile. So 6 crafts, and I got to do about 11 countries. I purchased my materials from a combination of places, Amazon, Oriental Trading, discount school supplies, wherever I could find. I broke down each craft section to their components and made a list of each supply I would need. So I broke it down like, okay, this craft is going to need plastic wrap, air dry clay, markers, paper plates, rocks, black Sharpies, etc. I buy everything in bulk because it's cheaper, and I always reuse my supply from my next kit. Rollover is my jam, especially with some libraries. I'm part of a library that finances are a little iffy sometimes. So if I can buy something and reuse it 3 times, I will. And you'll see in the next crafts how I reuse my materials. I talked up my kits at every story time, at every program. Anybody who would come to the desk, word of mouth is the best. You can print as much as you want, but word of mouth, that's what sells products. I also asked marketing to post it on our Instagram, our Facebook, whatever social media we had. And I made about 70 to 80 kits. Okay, next slide. Another thing I did during Hispanic Heritage Month is our library has a fish tank, and we call it our I Spy tank. And then we always do like a takeover or a special thing. So I took it over for Hispanic Heritage Month. And all these items that are inside the tank are from my family members. I asked everyone to give me items. So in this tank, I have 7 countries represented. I have Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Puerto Rico, Honduras, and Argentina. Okay, next slide. So at the very left corner is what I use. So I made a loteria card, which is like a bingo card with photos. And with the images that are inside the tank, and the kids could mark out the items that they find in the tank, take it to the desk, and I give them a sticker. So it's an interactive game for them. I will be switching this out. I switched this out during Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, and I usually take it over maybe 2 or 3 times during the year. Okay, next slide. So these are some of the displays that you can do. It's not hard. So for this one, I used nonfiction, geography, and some biography books about the author, the illustrator, or the character. And then the poster board was actually made from by my niece. One of her kids goes to a dual language school, and so they do country showcases. And this poster board has been used so many times. I use it a lot, but all the books and materials are from the library, and the artifacts are from my home. Okay, next one. So when I did an Encanto display, my book display, I made sure to find authors or illustrators that were Colombian background. And at first it was hard, you know, I think if we were to try and do this a few years ago, it would have been harder, but there are a great number of new authors that you can use. Juana Medina is one of my favorites, and I'm sure you probably know her. She does Juana and Lucas, and now she has a new series called I Will, I Am, and that's a really great one. You can also find about characters. So if you have, you can go to the art section in the reference and look for Fernando Botero or biographies about Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So that's how I made this particular one. Okay, next slide. So searching through Pinterest for Encanto inspired crafts is a little bit hard, right? Like you put in Pinterest Encanto and you're gonna get everything. So I'm gonna help you sort through the clutter of what it is. You can make candle lanterns. It's really easy. You don't have to use paper rolls if you don't feel comfortable. You can use wax paper and fold them in a circle, tape it. You can actually have the kids draw on it first and then roll it. You can get a tea light, put it at the bottom, and you got a lantern. Another thing you can do is accordions are very typical instrument in Colombia. I play the accordion. I wanted the piano. My mother got me an accordion. So that's like the national instrument of Colombia. There's some really great crafts on how to make like tiny little accordions. So that's a lot of fun. You can make paper orchids. Or big flowers. You can look up flowers indigenous of the Amazon, and you can make many of those flowers at home or in your program. Okay, next one. We're going to use Google. Okay, so another one you can do is you can Google Colombian art or Colombian craft. Make sure we're spelling Colombia right? 2 O's. So what's very typical are what's called campesinas, which are like farm girls, isn't it, like literal translation? These you can make out of air dry clay and then color them. So that's a really nice way to do it. You can even use air dry clay and food coloring and mix it up, and then you can do the colors. But that's a very typical one. I like this craft. It was very sweet. Very typical casitas. One of the things that you'll see if you go to many Colombian homes is we do have these little houses up on our walls. It's like a diorama, and they come in like, depending on how you want to decorate it. They're called casitas. When you're making them, it's a very common piece of art in Colombian homes. You can try making them as dioramas. I love dioramas. If you don't know what it is, Google it, ask me. You can use shoe boxes. These would be really nice if you can use like the kid-size shoe boxes, those small ones. You can make those small campesinas from air dry clay. Okay, next. So another holiday or day of observance you could share with your library is Dia del Niño. Children's Day, Dia del Niño, is a commemorative date celebrated annually in honor of children whose date of observance varies by country. So Mexico and some South America, it's April 30th. I just found out that Japan was May 5th or 6th. So every country has a different date. Check it out. In 1925, International Children's Day was first proclaimed in Geneva during the World Conference on Child Welfare. Each country selected its own day for the celebration, with Mexico and many other Latin American countries using April 30th. My sister told me growing up in Colombia, they would do a big deal for Children's Day. They would give children books. It was the National Day of Rest for children because in many countries, children labored. And UNICEF was one that would give children cards with their rights on them. I think she still had it somewhere, but yeah, it was just a really cool thing. Okay, next slide. So what happened is in the United States in March 1996, while being interviewed in Tucson, Arizona, this is author and poet Pat Mora. She has a plethora of books. Look her up. She's really good. If you like, she's very bilingual, so you can use her books bilingual or Spanish. She learned about the holidays celebrated in Mexico. Realizing that the United States had nothing similar, Pat proposed linking Children's Day and the celebration of childhood and children with literacy and bilingualism. So they created a new holiday, Dia del Niño, so Day of the Child, Day of the Book, Dia del Libro. World Children's Day offers each of us an inspirational entry point to advocate, promote, and celebrate children's rights, translating into dialogues and actions that will build a better world for children. And a lot of these resources are available. I know for us, it's the American Library Association, so ALA.org, or you can Google ALA Day of the Child, and they give you book lists. So if you don't know what books to put out as displays, they give you a list by different age ranges. They give you posters that you can print up and use as tabletop displays in English, in Spanish, in some other languages too. So use those resources. They're available. They're free for you. All you got to do is come out. Okay. Our next and final step is be open to feedback. Okay. So let me be clear. We're going to be very honest. You are going to make mistakes. That's okay. Say it with me. I am going to make mistakes, and it is okay because I won't get defensive. Yes, very good. Remember, we know you are trying to showcase a culture that you just learned, right? You crash learned it. People study cultures for years. There are PhD masters for this, right? And you're going to learn it in like a month with Google. So there's room for errors, right? Yes. But you're also going to be open to corrective suggestions. Receive and remedy, right? We're going to receive that information and we're going to fix it for next time. We're going to ask questions, right? We're going to listen to our guts. I don't think many of us do that anymore. We feel that pull, right? When something is wrong or off, but we don't let it motivate us. And maybe we should. If you're learning something and you're like, if you're watching something and you're like, I don't know about that, look into it. You may be right. That gut instinct is there for a reason. Remember also, you don't have to present on this culture. You know, if everybody else is doing it, you're like, oh, I gotta do it. You don't have to. You can wait until you get more information or you see what's being presented. And then you can be like, oh, where did you get your craft? Where did you get your performer? Where did you get your resources? If you don't feel confident about the culture, about what you are going to represent, just don't do it. Wait until you understand. Research, deep dive into the culture, and then ask yourself the questions that we asked ourselves in the beginning again. right? So even when we're done, we're ready to go, everything is set, you take a moment, you stop, and you think again. Are my crafts okay? My programmer, how am I doing this? Is this country appropriate? Let me show it to someone. If I'm doing something about the Philippines, guess what? I'm going to go find someone and ask them who's Filipino, can you look at this? Can I just get your suggestions? Can you just let me know? Because there's still time to correct things, right? Be ready to commit and put in a lot of research and bring authenticity into the programs you want to present. There are people like me, like Storytime Solidarity and our wonderful team, willing and able and ready to help you so that you can present a successful and respectful program. Next slide. So we're going to focus on being authentic, being inclusive, being aware, and representing with authenticity. Thank you. And if you want, there's my email. Feel free to email me. I will write back definitely. If you're interested in suggestions for books, my Pinterest is there, and I update my boards. I have books for Spanish, books that are by own voices or Latino voices, either the author, the illustrator, or the character. I have a Facebook page for Miss Rosie Reads, and an Instagram I just started. So yes, and you can always reach me at Storytime Solidarity.
Miss Rosie?
Yes.
We had a question for you to post the slides for the Hispanic heritage programs. If you could make that available after the program.
The one that had all the programs, like a lead up?
Yes.
Yes. And if you want, we can go back to it really quick. So a lot of the resources I used for those, I will be available to you. I think I sent it to Miss Kate, but I use a lot of, it's called Little Libros. It's a Spanish publisher, but they have, for $10, 100 activity sheets folder that you can like purchase digitally. And it comes with coloring sheets, games, word search, and stuff like that. So usually what I do is I print some of those up and I just leave them on the tables for kids to use, and I'll put the books there. They have they're mostly board books and some picture books now, but I really love their board books on people. They really select the people that don't get mentioned a lot in Latin American history. And the books are bilingual, so both English and Spanish. I think just reading it in English and letting kids know about these important people matter so much. Another one I use a lot is Spanish Mama. She's really great. She has a website and a blog. Very authentic. I've researched her a lot. I really like her selections and suggestions. She really showcases on particular important holidays or days of observance. So I really use her a lot too.
Okay, so a question from the chat. The Little Libros contact information, info or site info. Do you have a link available?
We'll make sure we get, Rosie, I was thinking we need to make sure we get all of these up on the Storytime Solidarity resources page. And we have the blog post about this event. We can go back probably in the next day or so and make sure we're linking to everything you've mentioned as well. Just so that there's a good landing page. We'll also drop the link for this video in there so people can access it there. So that should be available, I'm thinking, by about Tuesday. Somebody's asking about other groups besides Storytime Solidarity for multicultural things, and I'm going to suggest, personally, I like Anti-Racist Librarians as a starting point. They link to the Global Literature and Libraries Initiative, which is quite helpful. But does anybody, Rosie, do you have any other suggestions?
I know that, so I'm a part of a group here in Illinois called Spark. So we're Spanish Programming and Resources for Kids. If you're in the state of Illinois, you have access to that through Rails, RAILS. But I'm pretty sure like you'll be able to find networking groups in your area. Definitely look into We Need More Diverse Books, or We Need Diverse Books. And also, if we don't have one, we can make one, right? Yeah, Storytime Solidarity can be a good group that we can create these types of conversations. Our group is definitely diverse. I've had some wonderful conversations with Spanish and Latina librarians that are very in the know. And so use us as a resource. We're there. We're growing, and we're going to be there for you.
Yeah, and it's really important to us that we keep foregrounding the voices that are missing. Like that's one of the missions of our group, right? So if you're saying we're not seeing enough of that, we're going back to that slide near the end. It's okay to make mistakes. We're going to keep trying to add more. So the other day I got a beautiful email about how we don't have enough on Asian and Pacific Islanders. And that's really important. And I don't see that as a criticism. I see that as an opportunity to start adding those, because this is what this group is for. That's why we have solidarity, so that people who might sometimes get missed can find themselves together. And we're still new. Storytime Solidarity hasn't even celebrated its first birthday yet. So we're really trying to make it that inclusive space. Although obviously we want to, if anybody has other recommendations, that's great, right? We can't have too many diverse voices out there. We just can't.
Any other questions?
Yes, actually, an excellent question about the Encanto music, and if we can put resources for playing the songs on ukulele. Let me just say, those songs are copyrighted, so I wouldn't recommend playing those on ukulele, but I can definitely talk to Rosie and find some Colombian songs that might be fun to learn on ukulele. So that is a great question.
I'm really excited too. Rosie's been sharing with us that she's translated some of our favorite Storytime songs, like Zoom, 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 It's Going to the Moon, into Spanish. So that's another thing we're working on uploading. If you don't already follow us on YouTube, we're really trying to get those up, you know.
Yeah, and programs like you can look up like instrumental Colombian music and play that in the background. If you're worried about like what the song is about or what are they saying and you don't know Spanish, I would say like when you're making an Encanto program, just look for instrumental music and play it in the background. Now the Encanto music is based on Colombian music. Why am I forgetting his name?
Lin-Manuel.
Thank you.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Lin-Manuel Miranda and his group went to Colombia for I think like 2 or 3 months to travel the different regions and learn the musical styles. So you don't need to play Encanto because that is Disney, but they based it on hundreds of years of cultural music that's been played there. So yeah, just look up different artists. There's a lot of children's nursery rhymes or music if you want to do children's programming that you can use. I use a lot of Jose Luis Orozco. He's Mexican background, but he uses a lot of words are hard for me. I'm sorry, people. That they're not copyrighted. They're old songs that like my mom grew up with and taught me, and so a lot of that music you can find and play, and for sure, Ingrid and I can definitely make some beautiful ukulele music to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And Rosie, I just want to share, if you're okay with it, a story you told me the first time we chatted, which was about how when you, as a big Colombian family, you all sat down to watch Encanto and you weren't expecting to like it. And I think when you talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda's process and everything, that it's that research that made it, right? Like,
yes, when it came out, we were all together, that big old group that you saw, and we were like, okay, let's rip this movie up, and like within a couple of minutes, we were all like, oh my You know, like they have the food, they have this, like the clothes, like look at the clothes, right? We saw the clothes in the movie and I showed you the slide with all the typical clothes. Like they really, really put effort and thought and care into the research. And just know that, right? Like that's what we're taking cues from. If we're going to represent on a culture, we're going to do those deep dives. We're going to learn about that culture because that culture, that thing we want to represent, has people and traditions and customs and music and food. And if it was us doing, would you like to see, you know, something misrepresented? It would hurt you. And we don't want our patrons or our customers to feel that. You know, we want to put just as much thought into it as Disney did with all that enormous income they have and got to try. We can do it too. I've even told people like go find a Colombian restaurant, sit down, eat the food, and talk to the people. You know, where we love to share about our cultures, right? That's what makes us who we are. And the more you learn from us, the more respect we feel in return.
Oh, what a lovely note to end things on. Thank you so much, Rosie.